Who would have thought that a video that I uploaded 22 hours ago got over 80,000 views? For a channel of my size, that's massive, and your support is very much appreciated, so thank you for that. Now in this video, as the title would suggest, I'm going to be answering all your questions that you've posed, and yes, there have been over 500 to 600 comments across different social media platforms and including on YouTube. I've been trying to respond to pretty much all of them to the best of my ability. Now, before continuing, if you do have Instagram, again, I'd very much appreciate a follow. It's at TotallyDubbed, and if you're interested in all electric or hybrid vehicles, do follow Totally EV. Your support would be very much appreciated. So without further ado, let's get into your questions. So first off, how on earth did I get the Pixel 5 and why haven't other YouTubers posted anything about it? Well, quite frankly, I can't speak for other YouTubers. All I can say is that Vodafone sent me the phone, there was no embargo or no NDA, and I confirmed this today with Vodafone. So all I am aware of is that I am free reign to post anything I want about the Pixel 5. Now the only issue over here is that some people have been asking for extraction of apps. Now while the phone hasn't been released yet, I'm a little bit hesitant in doing that, and as such I've asked Vodafone for approval for me to extract APKs such as the camera APK. So that is just my stance on it and just my kind of integrity that I feel like I want to hold. So next up is the build quality. Well, what I can say is that the build quality of the phone is very good. I'm just going to go quiet and literally try and scratch the phone with my, well, pretty cut nails. So hopefully that gives you an indication of how the actual back feels like. It feels somewhat textured and yet feels quite nice. It is a little bit slippery, but it isn't as slippery as some of its competitors, namely those with glass backs. Now the fingerprint positioning is really good, although it's pretty sensitive. As it's not really indented, it can be sometimes mistakenly touched, and where you've got pull down notifications, that can be a little bit of a pain. Other than that, when it comes to the phone itself, the phone feels really lightweight and feels of a good size. So if I just compare it over here with my S10, you can see over here the size of the phone is well a little bit elongated, but over here the Pixel 5 has just got a really nice weight to it, a nice size, and therefore allowing for very easy one-handed operation. So next up is the battery share, which is basically what it can do with wireless charging. Now you have to enable the option, which is battery share over here. If I just open up the option, you can see over here it has a stop battery when phone reaches a certain percentage. I've got it at 10%. So now if I just put the phone down and put my S10 Plus, it's sometimes a little bit sensitive as to where it actually picks up. I think that's either to do with the S10 Plus or even to do with the Pixel 5, but it does charge. It's just, there you go, you can see it then picking up. Something a little bit easier is my Libertone Track Air Plus, and you can see right there that is accepting a charge, so it's charging my true wireless earbuds. If I get it off, you can see that the indicator goes off. So yes, you can wirelessly charge, and yes, it does work, and there's no issues whatsoever with doing that. You do feel a little bit of warmth, just bear that in mind with its all aluminium design. Now next up we've got speakers. Well, there are two speakers as far as I'm aware. There's a downward firing right speaker over here, and there's another one which is positioned somewhere over here under the display. As far as I'm aware, that's what I found when I put my ear towards the smartphone, because there's no speaker grill at the top or anything like that. So here I've got my friend's song called Falling by Priya J. I'm just going to play a little bit of this and then play it on my S10 Plus. And now with the S10 Plus. So what I will say subjectively as an audiophile myself is that the smartphone itself has, well, tinny speakers. Upon first impressions, the speaker over here doesn't sound too great, and the one underneath it, well, is downward firing, so if you're going to be holding it in your hand, it's going to be, well, covered up from that. Regardless of that, the sound is a little bit tinny, the bass is somewhat subdued, and it just doesn't sound as lifelike as my Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus, and I'm not sure if my microphone picked that up properly, but you should take my word for it for having the phone in person. Now, next up, we've got the display, which is a 6-inch OLED. Well, what I will say over here is that the display does look really good, and some people have been asking in terms of its uniformity. Well, from uniformity check, I found it to be absolutely incredibly great, and in terms of viewing angles, it's perfect, although there is a very slight tint at extreme angles, a slight yellowish tint at extreme angles, which, to be honest with you, is very much the case with a lot of OLEDs out there, unless you go to Super AMOLEDs. Now, in terms of brightness, the phone will get up to 483 nits in normal mode, as in the maximum brightness shoved all the way to the top. And if you were to reduce the brightness all the way down, it'll get down to 2 nits. Then if you are to enable adaptive brightness and shove a light at it, so for example another smartphone light towards the top of the phone, where I think is the sensor, then it'll get to 670 nits, which is absolutely outstanding. In terms of its lowest black level, put on maximum or minimum brightness on a full black screen, it gets to 0 nits exactly, and that is no surprise again, given that it's an OLED screen. Super AMOLEDs also perform in this sort of manner. Now, I should also say about the display settings. Now, you can see over here you've got a mode which has smooth display, and that's to flick between the 60 Hz toggle and 90 Hz, so therefore you can save yourself some battery if you prefer running at 60 Hz over 90 Hz through certain apps that support it, such as the system. Now, as for the developer options, for those people who are wondering, if I just go into system and developer options, there is also a mode over here where it enables you to force that 90 Hz to be in play pretty much all the time. So you can see show refresh rate, and you've got force 90 Hz refresh rate, so you can have that enabled as well. And now, what about when it comes to speed? Now, you have to bear in mind that I've done already one of the benchmarks, but what about when it comes to real world usage? Well, after using it for about a day after fully setting it up, I must say it's very fluid. I have no issues when it comes to transitioning between apps, and say for example going on Instagram here, pressing a thing, going on there, going back, and then now let's say going on to a game such as Pokemon Go. You can see over here it scales properly. Open up, let's say go on a Pokemon and try and catch it. So it just is very fluid. I have no issues when it comes to its performance. And again, that's upon first impressions, and it seems like the huge amount of RAM that's been shoved onto this Pixel 5 is actually a pretty good thing, because, well, it helps it in terms of being fluid with multiple different tabs. So again, like opening up a tab on Totally EV, you can see over here there's no issues whatsoever when it comes to doing that. So in terms of fluidness and responsiveness, the first impressions that I can give you is that it feels very fluid. I have no issues whatsoever, and qualms of the fact that it's using a lower tier Snapdragon processor over, let's say, a more flagship processor that you'd find in, let's say, my Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus. Now, in terms of battery usage, what I've done is just about an hour ago I plugged it into charge, and you can see right now it's at 85% with very light usage. And over here you can see the battery usage. You can see it's very little that's been used at the moment, and you can see it's sitting at 85% 1 hour and 17 minutes ago when it was at 100%, and it claims that it's got 22 hours left. Again, first impressions of the battery are okay, but they're not amazing in comparison to some of its competitors. For example, the S10 Plus that I have, even though that's pretty old, I feel that the battery life on the S10 Plus is just slightly better than the Pixel 5. And now we get onto the camera app, which has also been very much requested by a lot of people. Now, in terms of the camera app itself, you can see you've got a variety of different modes. You've got portrait camera, night sight as well, video too, and then in terms of the more, you've got panorama, photosphere, slow motion, time lapse, and lens. Now, as for the camera, if you were to zoom out or zoom, oh, it's going to zoom in. If you zoom out, you can see you've got 0.6. Now, you can adjust the slider, and you can see there's a little transition gap as it's switching between the two lenses over here. On the 0.9% and 1%, there's a slight shift, and then you can zoom in all the way to 7%. So just worth bearing that in mind. There's no way of just quickly toggling to make sure that it goes to its default lens, unlike other phones where you've got a little option. At the top over here, here, you can see you've got the flash, the motion photo if you have to enable it or disable it, the ratio, full or wide crop, so just that to bear in mind. And as for the settings itself, you can see save location, camera sounds, Google Lens suggestion, framing hints, selfie suggestions, gestures. In terms of the photo as well, the photo resolution, full resolution or medium resolution. Video stabilization is enabled by default, and then you got the audio zoom as well, so you can see that's options there. Now if I switch to video and do the same thing, if I just go into the settings over here, you can see you got FHD 60 FPS and 4K 60 FPS. Now it's worth bearing in mind that in the ultra wide mode you can't do ultra wide mode in 4K 60 FPS, however you can do it at 4K 30 FPS. So you can see over here ultra wide is enabled, and if I go into FHD at 60 FPS and at 30 FPS, you do have the ultra wide mode enabled. So that that lens, or that sensor, should I say, is capable of doing that. So 4K 30 FPS for ultra wide. Anything above that, in terms of if you don't want the ultra wide, then you can run it at 4K 60 FPS. You can see the option is grayed out. In terms of the settings over here, very much the same thing. There's nothing that changes. And again, the video stabilization is on and off. You can enable or disable that. So what about some more camera shots? Well, here they are. What you'll see again is a comparison between the S10 Plus and the Pixel 5, which the former is because I simply have that phone, while I don't have a bunch of other phones laying around. Now what you'll see on your screen is that the Pixel 5 is seriously impressive, and it does really blow my mind as to how good it does. While I did pictures with the Audi e-tron, and yes, shout out to Totally EV again, if you want pictures that are good, then the Pixel 5 honestly blows my mind. Specifically in this shot, when it comes to macros, it's just done an incredible job in terms of processing the photo. Now, in terms of processing the photo, just an FYI, when you do take the picture, when you go into your gallery, it processes it really quickly. The only one which took really long time to process, well, I'll say really long time in all things considered, was the panorama shot. So the panorama shot just took a little bit of while to stitch up and process, but honestly this was under 2 seconds in total, and again, very much impressive. As for its zoom, again here this does support up to 7 times of zoom, and here again the Pixel does perform extremely well, although it doesn't offer as much zoom as the S10 Plus, which goes up to 10 times zoom. Now in terms of low light performance, here you can see I've put my little baby Yoda and my chimp, yes, way before they became a meme and popular, in a very dark cabinet. Yes, I feel sorry for them too. Now what I did is first took a picture in complete pitch black without any sort of lighting, and you can see it's pretty dark to say the least on both phones. Then I enabled flash on both phones, and then I enabled night sight. And here is where the Pixel, which is kind of renowned for, really did perform extremely well by providing a really nice reproduction of the two subjects, aka Baby Yoda and Chimp, in a small little cabinet. Now, aside from all the jokes, the cameras are extremely impressive, as in the rear-facing cameras. But what about the front-facing cameras? Well, I did some pictures already, but here's some more portrait photos. So here, I've done a portrait photo with it on and off. You can see the differences because the Pixel outputs 2 photos per portrait. And also taken regular selfies outside of portrait mode, so to give you an idea of how it looks like. In lower light conditions, the portrait mode, selfie mode on both cameras do struggle, and yet again the Pixel does do a little bit of a better job in comparison to the S10 Plus. Now, you're wondering, what about video? Well, don't worry, again, I've got you covered because I did a few more videos, and here they are. Recording right now at 4K 60 FPS, video stabilization default on the Pixel 5, and it's disabled on the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus. Just going to come into a closer shot. Just give you an idea of how it focuses and get even closer. Here we're looking at 1 to 2 centimeters, if that. There we go, and then go back up. Gives you an idea of that. Recording right now at 4K 60 FPS, video stabilization default on the Pixel 5, and it's disabled on the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus. Just going to come into a closer shot. Just give you an idea of how it focuses and get even closer. Here we're looking at 1 to 2 centimeters, if that. There we go, and then go back up. Gives you an idea of that. Recording at 1080p 60 fps, stabilisation is enabled on both devices, so I'm now just walking, just normally, and now I'm just going to run. Pixel 5 is looking like it's doing a great job at stabilising with the EIS. And there we go. Recording at 1080p 60 fps, stabilisation is enabled on both devices, so I'm now just walking, just normally, and now I'm just going to run. Pixel 5 is looking like it's doing a great job at stabilising with the EIS. And there we go. So here's a video at 1080p 60 fps with the ultra-wide camera. And what we're going to do now, we're at 0.6, just going to zoom in at 1 times. I'm going to zoom in even more, and that's 3 times its maximum zoom. Getting absolutely soaked over here, by the way. So hopefully you can see how it's adjusting between the lenses dynamically as I'm continuing to walk, by the way. I haven't stopped walking while shooting this video. Back to 1 times over here. There you go, a little change of light there. Probably change of aperture. Again, 1080p, 60 fps with the ultra-wide test. So hopefully those videos gave you a little bit of indication of how the video stabilization is on the Pixel 5. I'm pretty impressed with them subjectively speaking, but I'd be very much intrigued to hear your thoughts. Now, what I will say after a day of usage in terms of my, again, first impressions is that the smartphone is really responsive, it's got an excellent camera, and its biometrics are fantastically, blazingly quick. It also supports fast charging and wireless charging in terms of in and outbound, and on the whole, I'm just pretty impressed by it. So, is it a phone that you should buy? Again, this is not my verdict, it's just my first impressions. Well, there's certain things you should consider. The phone's speakers are not that great. It's got a limitation of 1080p at 30 fps for its front-facing camera. It's got no dual lens either for its front-facing camera, so in terms of wider selfies, like with a group of people. It's not got a 3.5mm jack. It's not got dual SIM or expandable storage. And its fingerprint sensor, while it is very responsive, could have been a little bit more indented, so therefore you don't accidentally graze upon it each time you're touching the back of your phone and therefore expanding your notifications, if you have that option enabled, that is, or use it. But that's pretty much it. Let me know in the comments below what you make of it, and I'd very much appreciate your support by subscribing and liking, and of course favourite and sharing. There we go guys, I've been Totally Dubbed, take care and bye bye.